Nigeria's President Bola Tinubu last week appointed Abba Aliyu as the Managing Director of the Rural Electrification Agency, REA. His appointment follows the indefinite suspension of Salihijo Ahmed, former MD of the agency, on March 7, 2024, over an alleged 1.2 billion naira fraud. A statement on Friday by Bayo Ononuga, Special Advisor to the President on Information and Strategy, said Aliyu's appointment takes effect from January 23rd. The newly appointed MD, Abba Aliyu, has over 20 years of experience in energy and organizational development in the private and public sectors. He has played key leadership roles in the on-grid and off-grid power sectors, as well as the water resources and transportation sectors of Nigeria's economy. He was previously the head of the project management unit at the Nigeria Electrification Project, General Manager of Corporate Services, Project and Research, and Deputy General Manager at Nigeria Bulk Electricity Trading PLC, NBET. He joins us now to speak on his new appointment and what he intends to do differently from his predecessor in advancing Nigeria's rural electrification. Good morning and welcome to the morning show.
Good morning and thank you for having me.
Great.
Well, Mr. Aliyu, congratulations on your appointment. MD Rural Electrification Agency.
Thank you very much.
Well, the introduction already provides the first question. What do you intend to do differently as the MD, considering the fact that there's a lot of skepticism about rural electrification, and not just skepticism about rural electrification, about the entire electricity value chain in Nigeria. Only this morning, we were discussing this proposed plan to increase tariffs. If people in the city are panicking that electricity will go out of the reach of the ordinary urban dweller, how about rural electrification? Where does that leave the rural electrification project? Or will it be given, your plan is to make sure rural electrification is done free for people in the rural areas, if that were possible? But first, what are your priorities?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ruben. First of all, I would like to just make it very clear and state that any framework, electricity infrastructure framework provided to provide electricity free, that framework is bound to fail. Electricity is costly. Providing electricity needs to have an inbuilt commercial framework to allow for its sustainability. And that is a very important fact that needs to be done. And that cost of providing electricity must be, the tariff must be cost reflective for its sustainability. Having said that, to answer your question in terms of what are the priorities to be, my new priorities as the MD of Rural Electrification Agency. First of all, the Rural Electrification Agency is created to provide electricity access to the Nigerians that are without this access or to those that are underserved. So basically creating access and reliability for unserved and underserved communities. So the main focus is to face this challenge heads on. Before my appointment, the Rural Electrification Agency has been doing a lot in providing this access. But most of these efforts are more like scratching the surface. Now, the government, the present government, will want me to face this challenge heads on. And that is why the target that we set for ourselves is to electrify 25 million Nigerians in the next 3 years, as quick as that. In fact, to demonstrate this commitment, the present government, one of the key new arrangement or funding structure that the government signed is the $750 million funding provided by the World Bank to electrify 17.5 million Nigerians with a clear focus of how that will be done. 30 million Nigerians to be provided using isolated mini-grids, 1.5 million Nigerians using interconnected mini-grids, and about 12 million Nigerians to be provided using mesh grid and standalone home system. So this is one arrangement for 17.5. And still within the Rural Electrification Agency, we have what we call the Rural Electrification Fund, which already also we have funding to electrify 2.5 million Nigerians. That is the second focus. The third is a new funding arrangement that we are already discussing with the African Development Bank under their program that is called Desert to Power, which we intend to focus that funding in electrifying 5 million Nigeria. So in total, in 3 years, we intend to remove 25 million Nigerians out of electricity poverty, and which it's a very bold move by this government and demonstrate how audacious the present government is when it comes to tackling the challenges facing the country. 25 million Nigerian people is as much as the total population of some African countries. So that is one key focus. The second key focus is also enhancing some strategic sectors of the Nigerian economy. So apart from providing electricity to people, communities, enhancing their socio-economic livelihood, that we also intervene in at least 3 critical sectors of the Nigerian economy: the education sector, the health sector, and the agricultural sectors. So we intend to also continue to intervene in this and continue to strengthen this intervention. I must mention that, for example, if we pick the education sector, currently we have just delivered a hybrid mini-grid in about 7 universities and 2 teaching hospitals, one of which is the one here in Abuja. If you go to University of Abuja, for example, a 3-megawatt hybrid mini-grid is working there, providing the entire university, including the staff quarters, admin block, lectures, theaters, with reliable, clean 24/7 electricity.
All
The
right.
same thing if you go to Maiduguri, or you go to University of Agriculture in Abeokuta, or you go to Alice Ikweme University in Abia. All these are being provided.
All right.
And as we delivered on these 7, one more point that is very important to do. As we deliver on these 7 universities, we already have started implementation in another 8 universities and 1 teaching hospitals. So that is the sector intervention. And we have also done in health, where we provided 100 containerized mini-grid in 100 health institutions across the country. The same thing with agriculture. Just the first activity I spearheaded after being confirmed is signing of a grant agreement for the building of 23 mini-grids in agricultural hub, where we did a geospatial mapping of agricultural hub areas, and we identified these areas, about 60 of them, and picked the biggest 23, and we are now to provide a hybrid mini-grid in these agricultural hubs. So this is just 2 of what we intend to do, but more importantly, the second is creating reliable and resilient vehicle to do this intervention. So learning from the experience of the on-grid, we intend to create what we call the RESCOs, the Renewable Energy Service Companies, because most of our intervention is done through the private sector. But these private sectors, we want them to now build their internal capacity to be resilient.
All right.
And build corporate governance for them to withstand this intervention across the country.
All right.
Not only in Nigeria, but we want them even to start intervening in other African countries. Already some of our RESCOs are intervening in Sierra Leone, Gambia.
Okay, sir.
All
We
right,
need to
Mr.
ask you more
Aliyu.
questions. Mr. Aliyu.
Mr. Aliyu.
We need to ask you more questions.
Mr.
sir.
Aliyu,
Yes,
thank
please.
you so much. I mean, I can hear the passion with which you've come into the job, and so I can understand you wanting to just lay out your plans for us to see that you have really grand plans, and that's really good to hear. But, you know, when we hear plans like this, especially coming from the conversation we had earlier on with tariffs and tariff hikes, what we're hearing is the costs. the cost to the consumer, and then, of course, affordability. We're talking about rural electrification here. How do you hope to balance this? Because we want all these things to happen, but in terms of the cost to the consumer, the cost to rural settlers, what's that going to look like?
So thank you. Very good question. You see, the intervention, the way this present government structured our intervention is in such a way that we are required to de-risk the sector, the rural electrification sector, by providing capital grants to this private sector. And the wisdom behind that is that providing this de-risking would definitely reduce the cost of the tariff. So if you pick a tariff and you dimension it, a tariff has, for example, 3 key components. One, the cost of capital and capital appreciation. So if for example, if you go pick Azura, it's funded by private sector, and this private sector get funding from international funders, right, who provided the funding, and they would charge interest on that funding, right? And me, as the founder of Azura, for example, will also want to achieve profit. So this cost of capital that Azura gets, or the private sector gets, to deploy electricity infrastructure will have a component of paying back the cost of the capital or putting that infrastructure, as well as the interest to be charged. That is one cost. The second cost of a tariff is capital replacement. So as we put this electricity infrastructure, as it works over a period of time, it's bound to experience some challenge, overhead costs, staff payment, replacement. So there's a second component of this replacement cost. Then the third cost is the internal rate of return, which is more like a profit that will go to the private sector that put that infrastructure. So these are the 3 components of tariff to be charged. But the federal government now said that the first cost of deploying the infrastructure, the federal government will provide for these rural areas. So therefore, our own tariff that we will charge the local area, rural communities, would have less of that component. So we'll have more around capital replacement and some O&M costs and predetermined IRR. And that is why the costs would not be as high as what it's found in Hungary. So that is the difference. And that is why the federal government structured it in this way to reduce the cost of the tariff. And that is why it's affordable. Okay. If you look at the numbers, Reuven, let me even tell you this important thing. You know, there is a cliche to say that, the rural areas, they don't have the funding, the resources to pay for the tariff. Our collection rate is more than 90%. 90% in all the rural areas.
Real quickly.
Yes.
You see, for Africa to grow, all of this donor money that you're talking about from the Mission 300, to inject in the power sector is good. But are the local elements of the power produced in situ? That's another problem. Probably most of these panels will come from other parts. These battery parts will come from other parts. Why can't we create the batteries here? Why can't we reverse the investment here?
Very.
Because the sad part for me is with the Mission 300, out of that 750 million, maybe over 80% of that in inventory costs will still go to areas like the West, China, and thereabout, where they produce the batteries in India. How can we produce those elements in situ to be able to leverage? And please, can you make a pledge that we will not hear cases of corruption because your predecessor went out because of corruption? You got this job because a man was fingered in corruption, allegedly, so that we get some sanity in this process and develop Africa and Nigeria as a whole.
Thank you. Thank you, Hussaini. This is a very good question. I will start with the first part of the question to do with the local content development. Of course, it's a key area of our concern. But I'm happy to tell you that the present government of President Bola Tinubu had already started working in that regard. Let me tell you that currently here, for example, in Abuja, there's a company that we crystallize working together with REA called GRV here in Idu that is producing 250 megawatt capacity of photovoltaic panels here in Abuja. There is another company called Levin Photovoltaic Company in not Ikorodu, in Lagos, that is also producing 100 megawatt solar PV panels capacity in Lekki Tree, not in Lekki, in Lagos. I can't remember the area, but already had started producing. We are about to even go there for the commissioning of that company. In Lekki Trade Free Zone, there is a company called Green Vault that invested, a Chinese company that has been working with REA for the past 5 years, that has now invested $150 million for the setting up of a lithium battery assembly plant in Lekki Trade Free Zone. Just recently, partnering with REA, an electric vehicle assembly plant by a private sector called IRS has been commissioned and started producing, assembling in Kano State. When Mr. President went to China last year, one of the agreement the Honorable Minister of Power signed is an agreement with MCC, Mutual Cooperation Company, for the establishment of PV panel assembly plant in Abuja, electric vehicle assembly plant in Oyo State, Gombe, and Kano State. So this is to show you that already we are reversing the trend. What REA is doing is showing the private sector that the market exists for the private sector to come and establish these companies. And we, in April, the REA, in collaboration with Federal Ministry of Power and Trade and Investment, is going to have an international summit whereby all the companies that are producing all the equipment needed in renewable energy space here in Nigeria, or they are planning to produce, will come together for us to devise a strategy to implement, to actualize that. But already it has started. Then to answer your second question, in terms of creating transparency and accountability within the Rural Electrification Agency, I must say on national TV that when the Honorable Minister of Power nominated me for the appointment, he only knows of my name. He has never seen me in his life. So he nominated me, I think, based on what he has seen. I was, before this appointment, heading the World Bank and African Development Bank project, which is known for transparency and accountability. And one of the things that we are doing is bringing this level of transparency and accountability into the core REA system to ensure that we continue to hold ourselves accountable. To show you this, last year, we invited the press, who we expect to continue to hold us accountable. We presented our implementation, the implementation report of 2023 capital project, which is the first in the history of REA. We presented that to the general public. It's still on our website. You can go and look at it. And we expect the public to look at what we have done, challenge us where we have gone wrong, for us to continue to strengthen our transparency and accountability. Okay,
Mr. Aliyu, could you help address this subject about Rural Electrification Fund? Is it a kind of subsidy for people in the rural areas? Or the people in the rural areas, if they enjoy access either to off-grid or on-grid electricity supply, will also have to pay cost-reflective tariffs?
Thank you. So for the Rural Electrification Fund, if you go back to the Electrification Act, that is the fund that you will see in that act, which clearly articulate how the Rural Electrification Agency can source funding, how we can invest, how we can source for donation, grants, investment, for us to deploy this electricity infrastructure across the country. But what we use the Rural Electrification Fund to do it, is to use it as a matching fund. Recently, we launched another pioneer program that we call EHAT, Energizing Healthcare, Education, Communities, Transportation via E-Mobility, where we invited the entire subnationals. We devised presented the strategy and informed the subnational that we would use the Rural Electrification Fund as a counterpart funding. What we require for sustainability purpose is for the subnationals to bring their own funding, and we bring our counterpart funding, which most often it's 70-30 or 60-40. Most of the funding coming from us and the states bringing their own, and we deploy this infrastructure within these communities. So that is what we intend. And like I mentioned previously, our own funding, it's expected to reduce the cost of the infrastructure, which by extension will reduce the tariff in providing the tariff, and continue to also ensure that by the time the lifespan of the equipment comes to an end, we have provision of funding that we will use to replace this equipment for the sustainability of that infrastructure. So we use that to actualize the Electrification Act, deepening the intervention with the subnational in the entire country.
Well, let me ask it just further on that question. You say you partner with the subnationals, and that's really great. But in terms of compliance, because one of the things that has also been a challenge in the past is financial constraints. So when you talk about partnerships, whilst you're willing to expend your own percentage, how compliant have the states been? And in instances where they haven't had the resources to apply, what then would be the solution in those kinds of states?
To be very sincere, we have seen a great deal of compliance from many states. Even tomorrow, for example, we intend to have a roundtable with Jigawa State government. Already, when the governor came to REA pay a courtesy visit, he stated that already the state had provided its budget, provided their own counterpart for in the budget, and it's been approved. So that is something to do. You may even check the news to find out that we already had this roundtable with Katsina State, Plateau State. We plan to have with Bauchi, Lagos, Delta, Cross Rivers. So we have seen this a lot of traction from different state governors coming to REA, creating this partnership. And one of the things that we do is creating also a relationship with the National Economic Council. Just last year, we went to the National Economic Council, made a presentation of what we are trying to do as regards to creating the National Electrification Strategy and Implementation Plan, which is basically nothing other than going to each community, each local government, each state, identifying where are these so-called under-electrified communities, where are the underserved, what are the resources best, the most effective resources to be used to electrify these communities. So devising or deploying or designing a specific strategy for each community, each local government, each state, and aggregating it at the national level. We presented this to the National Economic Council, and even the National Economic Council created a subcommittee under the leadership of His Excellency, the Governor of Cross Rivers State, for us to deploy this strategy. And already we are working with the consultant to come up with it. And this would be one of the great achievements of this government by the time we complete this plan. Because the plan would give each state the least cost strategy of electrifying the communities. And it's not going to be from top, bottom, but bottom upwards.
Can I ask,
yes, please.
In terms of, one of the other challenges was obtaining data in terms of the states. Do you have a sense of the number of people, the areas that are worst or that are most in need in terms of states? Because I know that the needs of the states differ. and so your attention or your intervention in different states would be commensurate to the level of need and what they actually need in those states. Have you been able to gather data as to what the individual needs of these states and how you hope to address them?
Oh, absolutely. In all the roundtables that we have with the states, we provide them with this data. For example, I give you an example. I like to give practical examples so that it's not a cliche. When we had an engagement with the Katsina state government, we showed them that the number of mini-grid sites that are viable within the state. We showed them, I think, about 900 mini-grid sites that can provide power to 1.5 million indigenous of Katsina State. We showed them the area, we showed them the communities. We not only showed the communities, but the number of people within the community, the number of households, the occupation of the people within this community, the number of public institutions that are within this community. And that is the essence of this engagement with the state. I tell you that I would like to state it on record that we have data, not only data, but deep data that can help to strengthen our planning and create a least cost strategy of electrifying the communities. We intend to present the same thing of Jigawa State government in our roundtable tomorrow. And in any of our engagement with any state, we'll provide that data. And by the end we finish the geospatial mapping, we'll provide the entire plan and data of electrifying these Nigerian communities.
Okay.
Thank you.
So let's expand more on the data now. Can you tell me the mini-grid sites that are viable in all the states you're working on in the country as we speak? And can you also use your data to iterate the best possible tariff cost for these areas? Can you also tell me, do you have any data set that's going to make it easier for people in this rural area to be able to have payment modes and mechanism, and a data set that will be able to track the behavioral pattern and energy consumption pattern of these people using your grid, your smart grid system to be able to collect all of these data sets?
Yeah, so very good question. Yeah, so we, in terms of data for the entire country, yes, we know the country has over 150,000 potential mini-grid sites that can provide electricity to about 40 million Nigerians. We have that data. And like I told you, this is just the country-wide data. But we even have specific for each of the state. So if you pick a state, we will tell you how many mini-grid sites, which local government should have more mini-grids, and where should these mini-grids go. That is one. But in terms of the behavioral pattern, it's challenging based on the experience, but based on what we have seen. So I give you an example. In one community in Nasarawa State that we deployed our interconnected mini-grid, before our intervention, when we did the demand load analysis, we realized that they require between 200 to 250 kilowatt capacity mini-grid. And we deployed about 300 to create a headroom for a new consumption load that may come up. But just 6 months after the deployment of that mini-grid, we realized that the demand within that community has overshot even 1 megawatt. We went back thinking that our initial demand load analysis was wrong. But what we realized was the coming up of new businesses within the community, migration of people from neighboring community to those communities, establishing businesses because of the reliability of electricity in that community. So that is what now increased the load demand beyond our imagination. So now what we are thinking is to go and establish a second phase of our intervention in this community. So to say we have a data of the consumption demand, current consumption demand of the community, yes, we have. But futuristic, we may not have it because, like I say, it's contingent upon how people seize the reliability of electricity within these communities and start moving to those communities.
Data, have you been able to iterate a data set of a correct pain point, the least possible pain point for these tariffs? And secondly, how do they pay? What do they pay? Are you tracking how much they have paid in these returns? Briefly, as we wrap up, we're wrapping up now.
Yes, Husseini. Yes, we have that. We have, like I told you, the least costs of providing this electricity in these communities. Yes, we have. The payment, it's digital payment. When the vice president of the World Bank came and we took him to a community here in Abuja, in Kilankwa, under Kwali local government, he was amazed to see that all the people in the rural areas are buying their electricity using their mobile phones. He was shocked to find out that. And that is what is applicable. So they used electronic means of buying their credit. They monitor their credits using their mobile phones. And yes, we know the least amount or the least infrastructure strategy to deploy this infrastructure within these communities. Okay,
on that note, we would like to thank you very much, Mr. Abba Aliyu, the MD of the Rural Electrification Agency, for joining us on The Morning Show.